Alright, in this video I'm going to walk you through importing a data file into RStudio and cleaning it up and getting it ready for analysis. Now in this example I'm going to ultimately do an analysis of variance. So I'm going to check the AFX, that's the first thing I would recommend. And then we're going to do some filtering in this example. So select this DPLYR library and make sure that they're installed. So you can do this a couple different ways. You can import dataset over here, or you can just go to File, Import Dataset, and we're just going to go from text-based. So I'm going to select a data file here. I'm going to select the one that I was using in the previous example. So I select that file and just click OK to load it, and then you're going to get this pop-up window. So right here, this is asking you what do you want to call it within RStudio. So I'm going to do something simple. I'm just going to call it Data 1. You can call it whatever you want, but you're going to be referencing this in your command. So the shorter the name, probably the better. It shows you what we saw before in, actually let's get rid of this window. It shows you before the way the data file looks. So it should look like that. In your comma delimited file. So it's asking you a couple of things over here. It's asking you for, does it have a header? And the answer is yes. We have our variable names at the top, so we're going to leave that selected yes. Comma separated data, yes. You have a couple of different options here, but we're using CSV data. Decimals are periods. Now down here, if you have missing data, and this data file does have missing data, we have that missing data indicated with an NA, and I'll show you that later. Now, if you don't have missing data, I would leave strings as factors checked because it will automatically read these variables, which are string variables, letter variables, and make them an IV, which is good. We have missing data, though. It's going to read that NA, and it would make our dependent variable an IV, and that I have found caused a lot of problems. So because I have missing data here, I'm going to uncheck strings as factors, and we'll deal with that in just a second. I'll show you the repercussions of that in just a second. So we're ready to go. We just click import, and now here's our data. It's now in RStudio, but we got some things to clean up. First, let me go down. I think it's like row 778, and I'll show you that missing data, and you can sort of see, there it is right there, 778. You can see that this person didn't have any misses, so there is no reaction time, so it's just an NA, and when we do our analyses, that will be dropped out of the analyses, but we have to account for that. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at our data file structure. So if you do str data1, this is because this is what you called the data frame. You're going to press enter, and it's going to tell you what you got here. So you got a sub ID variable. Now it's labeling that as an integer. We're going to have to fix that. The test variable is labeled as a character string variable. Same with our stimulus IV or item IV, also labeled as these character string variables. Proportion is our DV, and it's labeled correctly as a number, which is good because we want it to be. And then our RT, we also want this to be a number, but right now it's a character string, and so we have to fix that. So it's always really important when you import data to take a look at your data structure to make sure that you're not going to run into problems later when you do the analyses. So fixing some of these other variables are pretty easy in terms of just having some commands. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy some stuff from over here off to the side to save some typing, and I'm going to explain what we're typing in here. So I'm going to paste in here. So what we do in this first line, so we reference a variable by the data frame, so it's data1, and then there's a $ and sub ID. So you identify that variable. That's the first thing we're going to do, is recode it from an integer. And then, so this is sort of like Python-like, but you have a less than sign and a dash, which means equals. So we're going to set this variable sub ID as a factor. We're going to change it to a factor, and then we have to reference itself again. So we have data1 $sub ID. So we're going to do that for all of the variables. We're going to set them from, we're going to set them as factors so that we can use them in the analysis. Now the analysis of variance command, We're not going to use sub ID as a IV, but we do identify it as a variable. So you could, in fact, if you were looking at individual differences, you could label it as an IV, but we have to label it as an IV in our data frame. So you just type those commands in, you press enter. Now if we do and you can press up on the keypad there and you'll get your commands back again. And now if we look at the structure, you'll see that it's changed. It's made the sub ID a factor, test, stem, and item all factors, and we have a proportion. So we're halfway there. All we have to do now is fix our RT variable. I ran into some problems with this, so this is why I would suggest doing it the way I'm doing it right now if you have missing data. So what I would do now is you're going to enter in a slightly different command. It's pretty similar to what we used before. Let me copy it and I'll paste it down here and then explain it to you. So again, we're doing data1 $RT because that's our variable. We're changing it to a numeric value and we're switching it from a character. So you have as character data1 RT. So that command there will change it. And so let's go ahead and put it in there. Now it's giving you this warning message. It says NA is introduced by coercion. That's actually a good thing. It's telling you that it's now coding the NA, and that's what we want it to do. So then we're going to go look at the structure again, and you'll see that the RT is a number. So if we want to do analyses for reaction times, we now can. So our data frame is set up. It's ready to go. It's ready for analyses. The next thing we would want to do potentially is maybe filter the data. So one of the things that's true in this data structure, as you can see, I have hits, misses, correct rejections, and false alarms. So a lot of times what I like to do is look at correct responses. So that means filtering out misses and false alarms. Well, how do you do that? So what you do is you use a command like this. This relies on this dplyr library, but you paste this command in here. It may give me an error. If it does, it's because of the quotation marks in here, and I'll fix that on this video so you can sort of see that happening. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a new data frame. We're going to call it data2. And again, we're making it equal to data frame 1, but we're filtering. So you have this % greater than % filter, and we're going to filter item, and we're going to keep hits. So item double equal signs, quotation mark, hit, quotation mark, and here you'd have to have capital letters because it is case sensitive. That's true for a lot of these commands to be case sensitive. And then you have the slash. You'll find it on your keyboard just above the enter key. And then item double equals correct rejection. So that's going to filter the data. It's going to keep item equal to hits, item equal to correct rejections. When we do this, let's see if it runs. Yeah, so it gave me an error here. So if you just type this in, retype it with quotation marks, it's happening with the cut and paste. Doesn't like it from Word for whatever reason, then it works and creates our new data frame, as you can see over here. Now we want to look at it though. Let's look at data frame 2. So if we double click data frame 2, it'll come up. You could also type just data 2 down here and it would display. Here, I'll do that for you. So you type in data 2 and it'll display it in this window. It's only going to show you some of the data. But what you're going to notice is that the misses and the false alarms are gone. So it went ahead and filtered our data. So now we're ready to sort of analyze our data a little bit differently if we want to. So the next step would be to go on and analyze the data. Now I have a different video that does that. The example's different, but I go through some of the same processes for importing the data and filtering the data. So I hope you find this helpful.